So we have a question for this panel. It's for Aaron. It says, are Wounded Warrior Program resources available to active duty service members or just veterans? And do you have to have been wounded in combat to be eligible for their programs?
Okay, so first part of the question, yes, Wounded Warrior Project resources are available to active duty service members, absolutely. And no, you do not have to have been injured in combat to be eligible exclusively for Wounded Warrior Project programs. They're open to a variety of injuries, visible or invisible injuries, non-combat related, training related, open to everyone.
You got one? Go ahead.
So the next question for the panel. What is your single best advice to balance organizational goals with being emotionally intelligent and approachable for the workforce? How can any leader best build organizational resilience?
Yeah, I would say, I guess the easiest way to do is you put your people first. And I think in everything you do, you just make sure they're a priority. And the important part of that is, I think, connecting with them. So you have to ensure that there's open communication all the time, that the communication isn't just one way, or that you say that communication, communication is valuable, but you don't honor that. Like you have to, actions speak louder than words. And I think it's so important to, you listen to people, hear what they say, make sure you turn that into action, and then get that feedback afterwards. Is this what you expected of us as an organization to make you a better part of that organization? And I think we're learning over time that the organization goes beyond those folks that maybe just collect a paycheck or show up for work every day. It's the organization is the extended family, the spouses, the children, other folks that are important to those people, and connecting with them as well. And certainly I would say in policing, it is important to connect with your community and find out what your community expects of you as a police service. And I found too that over time, if you are connected with that community, if you're listening to them and working with them, they can actually be a force multiplier. They can help you accomplish your goals. And when you know your community's behind you, it makes it much easier for you to do your job, and you feel supported and you feel empowered, and the community actually makes you more resilient.
I think one of the things I would add to the idea of what can leadership do is this idea of not knowing. And there's a saying in Buddhism that says not knowing is most intimate. And what that means is it's the best way to connect with another person. When we show up with the idea as a leader that we know everything and that you just come to me and I'll feed you the answers, that shuts down those lines of communication. And so to really, with curiosity, know that every time we step into a situation as a leader, we may not know. And so to come into it with the initial mindset of not knowing. I may know what happened with that individual yesterday, but today's a new day, and I don't know what's going to happen today. Or I may have done that situation 10 times before, but this is the 11th time. And what is it that I don't know? Okay? So I think that this idea as leaders that we know everything and that we have all the answers, we need to drop that narrative, and we need to come from a place of vulnerability and humanness that says, I don't know everything, and that you and I will collaborate together to find out what is the best thing and what do we need to know in order to change the narrative or to create a shift.
I'll add one more point. When we were working with law enforcement leaders, once they started acknowledging the needs of their officers and seeing them, we heard a lot from the officers that they felt transparent to their leaders. And we could see the shift that once the leaders got it and they asked the question at the right time following the incident, the the officers went with them further. And not acknowledging and brushing it to the side and suck it up did not serve our officers, and that's the toll that, of course, came with that. No one spoke about it. It was, brushed to the side. We heard of many cynical sentences coming from leaders at times when, you came back from an incident with 50 wounded at a terror attack, civilians, and we would hear stories of even bragging. Last week we had 60. So that was not the right thing by leadership at the time, and these are the things that have changed, and thankfully we've moved forward. So acknowledging, bring the unit's cohesion through that, standing by them is key. Thank you.
Thank you. For Kirk Ferguson, during your message, you discussed how you were still functioning at a fast pace even after retirement. How and what did you do? We're going to rewind that. We're going to go to another question. Thank you for your patience. This morning, we heard that nourished leaders create resilient teams. How can we in the military better develop nourished leaders?
So I'm going back to the point I just made. We need to take care of our leadership first, and then of course take care of their officers as well. It's coming from top down and from bottom up, and we need to make sure that we change the culture here, and we change the conversation. We acknowledge, we speak about things that we didn't, like any organization, I assume, but also applicable here. I think the other piece when it comes to the soldiers, first responders, all these amazing women who serve and take care of us, is that we forget at times, and you may too, that you're human. You are superheroes, but you're human heroes to us. And knowing that and adding that is critical when looking at our superheroes who are human. So I just wanted to add that.
And I would just say, to build on that, is I think the front line, in the surveys that we've done, the front line first identifies with their immediate supervisor. So if it's a constable, they tend to look at their sergeant or staff sergeant as, the first line of defense and the person that they look to for leadership. And I think if the leader is modeling the right behavior, if the leader is willing to look for support or assistance or get help, that models that behavior for the people that they are leading. And I think that, setting the example, it means a lot. And it is the leaders that will help change the culture as well. That old, it's been said already a number of times that I grew up in a culture of you just suck it up. And no matter what you see or no matter what you did, tomorrow's another day, so wipe the slate clean and start again, and don't let that stuff eat away at you or bother you or build up. And I think that's actually changing. I think the culture's changing, and people are more, certainly I think millennials are more willing to reach out, and so I think if the culture isn't changing by way of leadership, the culture is going to be forced upon an organization to change. So that's just my opinion.
And I'd like to add, we've talked a little bit about, and you've heard multiple people say that we need to destigmatize mental illness, and I agree with that 100%. But one of the ways that we need to destigmatize mental illness is to destigmatize the concept of self-care. Because so often what we see is it's sort of a soft, again, it's one of these soft woo-woo words. And when somebody says, hey, I'm not going to go out tonight, I'm going to tuck myself in early, or no, I can't schedule another meeting, we sort of pawn them off as, wimps or whatever. We need to embrace self-care and to not stigmatize people who are practicing good self-care. And that starts with the leaders. It starts with the leader saying, having good boundaries and saying, no, I don't schedule meetings before 8 because I have a morning practice or a morning ritual of, going for a run or reading a book or whatever it is, that we need to sort of, as leaders, practice what we preach and exemplify what we expect other people to do, which is practice self-care. And we need to make that visible, and we need to make it okay for other people to say, I can't do that, or I'm exhausted, or I need to take a break, and not stigmatize people who do that.
And just to reiterate what these other three folks have said, the leading from the front, leading by example, this is not, if we're, preaching the idea of self-care and of resilience to those that work for us, and if we're not doing that ourselves, you really lose kind of all credibility, and then you're not able to take care of yourself nor anybody else. You hear this on the airplanes. You have to secure your oxygen mask first before you can help anybody else. And leaders, aren't above that. We have to be the ones to do that first, and then, reach out and model this to those that are part of our team.
On the subject of resiliency, do you have recommendations for easy reading that can be shared with our teams?
So I'm going to, hopefully I get the author right, but there's a book called The Roadmap to Resilience. I believe it's by Meichenbaum. That's fairly user-friendly. It outlines sort of various principles and practices that lead to resiliency, things that you can implement sort of in your day-to-day life. But yeah, Roadmap to Resilience.
I have the world's biggest pile of books, and so the book that I referenced in my talk, Standing at the Edge, I think is a really good one. It talks about falling over the edge and practices to get back. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Put a link up, or yeah, maybe there's some way we can send out each one of us can share our favorite resilience book. Oh my gosh, there's so many, I can't even begin.
Molly, can we put on the website a few links? Yeah. Okay.
So in case the audience did not hear that response, there is a reading list, and it will be available. We'll make sure that that's sent out via email. For the next question, each panel member, what do you believe is the vital building block to create an environment of resilience?
Can you repeat that, please?
What is a vital building block to create an environment of resilience?
First of all, peer support. I think one of the most important pieces to resilience is peer support, and we're hearing it throughout the day because we're hearing it. If you have a friend to call, but our peers are our friends. Our peers know what we're going through. Sometimes we can't express what we want to express to our significant other because we feel that they would not understand exactly. But building peer support within your unit is one of the key components to resilience because it opens up the conversation before the incident happens, and you have someone to rely on, and it becomes part of the culture again. It's okay to discuss it. Another piece that I'm mentioning from the question before, but it relates to it, is that we see time and time again before we have any resiliency programs implemented in any of the organizations we work with, we always see the difference in our ability to create change within the unit if the commanding officer is there prior to tell his or her officers, this is important enough for me, for you to step out of your day, step out of everything that you're doing and concentrate on that. This is the most important thing for me, for you to do. It changes the whole workshop. So as a leader, if there are leaders in this room, make sure if any of your units are there to go through any training of this sort, make sure that they hear it from you first. That this is the most important thing for you. It changes the entire perception of it as well by them, and it changes the conversation. By the proactive approach here is, of course, to deal with it before, hopefully before things happen. and then it's incorporated into your daily activities. And when the big thing happens, which it always does, then people know how to address it because they've handled it during the day-to-day. So.
I'll be brief. I'll just build on what Maya said. I would say that, like, the number one is relationships, and not just relationships inside your organization, but relationships outside your organization to get and develop multiple perspectives. I think it's important to pursue people that have similar interests as you within your organization, but that can give you a fairly myopic view of the world and of life. If you're looking, you know, we always say, and I'm guilty of this, I know my first, I would say my first 5 or 7 years of being a police officer, all my friendships were internal. And they just supported my view of the world, which I think over time was somewhat jaded and the glass was half full. I think as I, you know, moved around a bit and I established other relationships with people in my faith community or in my neighbors. You know, I would never talk to my neighbors because it was sort of us against them. And it was, you know, the police good, everybody else bad. So to get that other perspective, to hear from your neighbors, friends, extended family members, people that don't have the same interests as you, so you do get a different perspective and you develop different learnings as far as maybe some sports you're interested in or you never knew you were interested in, doing things that you never knew were important or interesting or goals that you wanted to establish beyond your career. And so I think it's important to develop those relationships that will help you develop multiple perspectives and get that empathy that is so necessary in being a good leader and a good person.
I think that to stop thinking that you have to fix everything is really important, and to think more importantly than fixing all the problems is to come alongside the people who have the problems. So we're just not computers that fix problems, but we're people. And so the compassionate ability to come alongside with another person rather than just fix them and send them on their way.
And again, I would just emphasize connection, the connection to people internally, externally. I mean, we talk, you know, about what it means to be, you know, a resilient leader. We have a leader in our organization who talks a lot about, you know, mission first, people always. And I think that that's a really great way of, you know, balancing the operational goals with, you know, taking care of your people. So mission first, but people always.
For Ms. Tadmore, are some or all of Natal's resources available online for supervisors and teams to use?
Can you ask it again? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Those resources that you were referencing in your slides, are those available for the other teams and supervisors to receive that training as well?
So our trainings are very experiential. They're not online. As I mentioned, there's no PowerPoint available because we just don't use one. I'm the only one who uses a PowerPoint. But yeah, all of our trainings are completely experiential with many simulations, so it's not something you can read. But as of this month, you can find a book that is online, and we'll add that. It's called Operational Stress Management. It was written by Natal's experts last month. It was put online, and I think it's very valuable to read. It will give I think especially in the military and first responders, a deeper view into this methodology and this comprehensive methodology. But training itself is very experiential, therefore it's not something that you can just read. It's not theoretical, it's practical, and that's the idea behind it, to embed it within the unit's core mission, is to really make it practical and not look at it and say, that makes sense. You need to feel it, and that's the way we operate. We make people really feel what it is that they'll be feeling in the field or are feeling in the field, and then we talk about theoretical piece behind it, and that connects it to the practical application of the operational cycle of the unit. And every training is a tad different because of the unit's mission. As I mentioned, for undercover cops, police officers, it's different because we know that we need to deal with certain things that highway patrol don't deal with and so forth, and we want to make sure that we target it well to make it relevant. There's an overarching theme, and it's an interesting read. I highly recommend tapping into that resource, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions, of course. Did that? Yeah.
For Ms. Stevens, do you have recommendations for acknowledging suffering and showing empathy with someone who has wronged you or who you have a broken relationship with?
So the question is suggestions on working with people who have wronged you, or you have a tough or a
And
broken
now they
relationship.
have an issue with suffering.
So that's really hard, and I want to preface this by saying I get this question a lot, and really what it is you're asking about forgiveness, and forgiveness is never something that we do for someone else or we do to appease someone else, and forgiveness is never something that says what you did was okay and I forgive you. So forgiveness comes from a place of self-care, self-compassion. And I think Molly had a slide up that said, compassion is incomplete if it doesn't include yourself. And so when we work with relationships with other people that are difficult, unhealthy, broken, and there's a lot of suffering in it, it starts with our own ability to be compassionate towards ourselves and work with how we're feeling and working on it before we work with the other person. So, for example, when my son died, he was with another individual, and in my mind, I feel like that other person could have done something, and they didn't. And so for me, I have to work on what that looks like to forgive that person, but I'm not forgiving him of what he did, or I'm not forgiving him or telling him it's okay. It's something that I have to work through. And so in this act of forgiving, it comes from a place of self-compassion and saying, I am struggling with this, and having compassion for the struggle and having compassion for the fact that you may not have the skills to work through this yet, but that you're willing to make the effort and work through it. I think that mindfulness and being aware of ourselves and our mindset around our relationships is really important. And so to start to work with the narrative of what am I telling myself about my interaction with this other person that is real and true, and what is it doing for me or to me, and where am I willing to start this process? And the answer may be, I'm not ready yet to work on this because some other factors may be in play. And I know it's a lot more complicated than a simple question of, well, what do you do with difficult people, or what do you do with broken relationships? But that's kind of, I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. In your opinion, to cultivate resilience, what's the percentage breakdown between personal responsibility and organizational responsibility? For example, is it 50-50, 60-40?
I don't think there is a breakdown. It's probably 100% responsibility on both sides. I think both sides have to commit to being resilient 100% of the time. I guess, if you are personally resilient or promoting resilience as a leader and the organization doesn't support that or prop that up, you're swimming upstream. It doesn't mean you're not going to accomplish things and make things better, but it's far more difficult. So I think there is no 50-50 split or 60-40. I think it's 100% on both sides, and you'll have the outcome you want. I think if you have resilient people, you're going to have a resilient organization. I think if you have a resilient organization, you're going to have resilient people. They feed off of each other, and it is kind of, it's contagious as such. I think it goes beyond the borders of the organization as well, because the public you serve, the people you deal with every day will see that and feel that and benefit from it. Like I said, I believe that if you're resilient as an organization and individuals, you serve the public better, and you do a better job as a consequence of that. So I think everybody benefits. I think we're not even realizing the benefits of that sort of, the benefits of resilience at this point yet. I think we're just learning now. I think it's just coming into its own, and I think we struggle with it. I'd like to go back to the whole, the self, the self-help thing, and it's important for us to, take care of ourselves first, and as leaders, as members of an organization, and then I think that carries on to other folks, and we've got to get past the stigma of seeking help, and because I think that's still alive and well. Certainly in military and paramilitary organizations, there's still that stigma of asking for help, and that's got to be overcome in order for the organization to benefit from it.
To add to that, I think any organization today, I think we all live under a lot of stress today. If we live in 2019 in the United States for sure, and many other countries, it's a stressful world. We've put more and more stress upon ourselves. The society puts a lot of pressure on us. I think organizations can work much better if they do implement resiliency capabilities within the organization. I think it benefits the person, as we said, the unit, the department, of course the organization. We see time and time again, if we invest in our people and we give them the toolkit to do better for themselves and their unit, then the mission, the operational mission works better, and then people don't leave as quickly, people don't take sick leave. So if we're looking at HR purely here, investing in our people ahead of time and not waiting till something happens is beneficial for the organization on an organization level, and of course the humans, the people who work for the organization. So it's on us to take better care of ourselves, but we need our leadership to help us, and if it's the leadership that puts stress on us, it's on them to help us become more resilient to what it is. And I think this big word, as we're all mentioning it, we're all coming at it from different angles. I think there are a few key things that any organization can take upon itself to lead with and work with and benefit the organization as a whole and the different departments.
I'll add a quick little note. I agree that it's definitely not one or the other, or an organization or the individual holds more or less responsibility. I think it's on both. But I will say that if you find that the organization that you're in and that you are working in and spending a lot of your time in is genuinely a bad fit for you, and we get into those morals, respect, moral distress and integrity, then I do think there is some personal responsibility to take care of yourself and understand and recognize when maybe this is no longer a good fit for you. Like maybe it was at one point, and rather than expect the organization to change, to take that responsibility onto yourself. I'll give you an example. If, for example, you're a vegetarian and you're working for a butcher, that's probably ethically not a good fit, right? It's not to say that the butcher's job is not important or that they're not being resilient or responsible or understanding or kind or compassionate, but at some point we have to look at our own set of morals and values and make sure that we're in integrity with that and take action that supports our own well-being.
Ms. Tadmore Adderman, what is the main cultural difference regarding the attitude towards resiliency between Israelis and Americans?
A lot of similarity. Ouch. I think first of all, a lot of similarities. What I think we, from sharing a little bit about our context and our 71 years in the making of a country, we've had to endure a lot of trauma to get to where we are at. And we just, in a way, had to do it faster because we had no choice. It's making a decision, does our country just survive through this, or are we going to be helping our people and help them thrive? And that started with, day one, as I mentioned, was all about the day after for us. And that's how we all looked at it as a country, as a nation, helping people after the fact. And, because we live in a society, in a country that it's such a vicious cycle, and it reflects everything and anything in our country and our work at Natal, we had to make sure that we have to take care of people before the incident happened, before the trauma is so embedded and becomes post-traumatic stress disorder. So we started with the kids. I'm just taking it. And we knew that that's not enough. We have to take care of all of our at-risk communities. And that's something that I just think that fortunately, unfortunately, we're a little bit ahead out of necessity for survival. I sometimes say that we're like a little bit of a human lab of 9 million people, where our psychologists live amongst us. We are part of the same society. There's no them and us. It's all of us living around it. So it's just there. So we had to address it as a country. We had to address it faster. So very similar.
To the panel, how do you best teach someone grit? Resilience, essentially. Grit was brought up earlier with Dr. Marty, so how do you best teach someone to be resilient is the question. How do you best teach someone else to be resilient?
I don't think that we can make anybody do something they don't really want to do. So I think we can't teach someone else resilience who isn't open to learning resilience. But I think that we can share what we've learned. We can be open to conversations. We can be open to not knowing what that other person may be experiencing, and allow them space to explore. But I don't think we can tell someone to be resilient or say, these are the things you need to do to be resilient. But we can provide them the tools and let them discover what it means to be resilient in their world. Again, your goldfish is my whatever. So if I'm seeing someone and saying, oh, I think you need to be more resilient, I can certainly provide opportunities for them to step into that space. But the other individual will always decide whether or not they are open to becoming more resilient or receptive to that. So I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's a great answer. And then, I think turning resilience into just much more of a normal, commonplace, mainstream experience, not just something that's, built into some psychobabble stuff or the frilly self-care. We're not talking about, bubble baths and spa days. I mean, we're talking about taking care of human beings and setting them up for success in all areas of their lives. And if we can't, if we're not continuing to talk about it, if we're not having summits like this, if we're not trying to change the narrative on what that means, we're failing, as a collective.
I would say you have to model the behavior yourself. Be resilient yourself, demonstrate resilience. I know, in my world, if something goes wrong, everybody looks for the person in uniform to fix the problem or solve it, no matter what it is. And when everybody's running away from the problem, you're running towards the problem. And I think that's part of demonstrating resilience, is you model that behavior. And I guess the other thing you do is you just ask those people that are in difficult times or under stress or having challenges in their life, how can I help you through this? Can I make some suggestions for you? Can I point you in the right direction? Can I be the traffic cop for making your life better or more whole, or getting you over this hump or this challenge?
Okay, that's it for all the questions. We have a couple still that we'll add to the list from earlier today, and if we have time, we'll discuss them later or send them out via email through a Word document, I believe, with the answers, and email them out to everyone. So thanks to the panel, and thank you.